That was such a powerful performance. So beautiful, beautiful repertoire. And I'm so happy and honored to have Ariadna here join us. And we're now in the Q&A section. So we will open up the mics to some students, but I have some questions I want to ask Ariadna about her performance. And I want to start, I have two questions, Ariadna. The first one is I want to know, how do you balance the folk tradition with the classical tradition in music like Son del Barrio, that that is based on a song, a popular music song, and how much, like, are you doing it on purpose, or is it just comes natural, balancing the popular music tradition and the Afro-Caribbean rhythms in that kind of music with the fact that it's like a piece to be performed in a classical setting, etc.
Yeah, first of all, thank you everyone for such a beautiful comments. Thank you so much. So good that you like it. This is a very interesting question. I think it's something that I think is kind of both, but mainly it's coming. I think it's coming mainly natural. Um, I'm Cuban and I'm born in Cuba, so there is certain rhythm patterns that you are so used to listen to since you are leader. So you are so familiar with them. But what I think is maybe interesting in my case is that what I found beautiful in these pieces is the combination of these folk music patterns, rhythm patterns, and the melodies and the classical concept that the pieces has. So that's what I like about the pieces. But I think it's mainly coming natural. I think I don't think that much on that when I'm while I'm playing. Uh,
Yes, it happens to me too when I playing
yeah,
the Puerto Rican classical music. Um, it's a very interesting compromise that is always
yeah,
happening, right, between the
yeah.
performing it as a classical music and also just wanting to like dance as you're playing it. Like, um, my other
Mm.
question is, and this is more for everybody, that is such a powerful piece, the Rito de los Orishas. And I wonder if I know you worked with Leo Brower directly when you were learning this piece. And I wonder if you can share with us what are like some of the concepts that Leo shared with you when you were working with this. And also if you can tell us like what is going on in this piece. Is there like a story behind it? What's the story behind this piece?
Well, I mean, this piece is the story behind is I think is the Afro-Cuban religion. Orishas is our goddess on the Cuban religion, and this piece is based in three of them, and the female ones. So you can see that there is some phrases and some part of the pieces that are very rhythmical that represents the drums. And then the first part is more like kind of the preparation for all the rituals that religious people used to do in the Afro-Cuban religion in order to evocate them, to bring them to the earth and to bring them to the ceremony. So this is the first part. It's kind of meditation introduction, and then is the guidance is coming. So the piece is. So now, technically speaking, when it's about the guitar, there is one thing interesting with this piece, and I have been playing it since I was 19, and I'm 41 now. And it's always a new experience to play this piece. I have never ever played the piece the same. And I was actually competing with this piece during my 20s. And it's interesting because a surprise when you are playing it. All the virtuoso parts. I remember my first lesson with Leo Brower. I was 19, and maybe it was the hormones, but you really want to show up and you really want to play like fast. And then I remember that he was so calm, and then he told me, "Oh, beautiful, but articulation is the key." so then I start to learn how to articulate, for example, in all the virtuoso parts that the piece has, not rush. Then I do a research, actually, because one of my master studies was based in the mixture between Cuban, Afro-Cuban music, the music that we use in the religion, and the classical music, and how Brouwer used to always bring into his music all the rhythm patterns and from the Afro-Cuban music, especially from the music that we use in the religion. So I was forced to, I'm not a religious person myself, but I was forced to investigate like really deeply about the religion, about specifically the music, the drums, the importance of the drums. So I was participating in some of the ceremonies, even if I wasn't a religious person, just for me to understand the story behind the piece, because he actually suggests me, like, you really have to try to understand in a deeper way what I really mean. And it was very interesting actually to work with him from this point of view, from the interpretational point of view, and not just focus on the technique and on the guitar. He was also very focused on the interpretation itself, and how to create your own interpretation of the piece, because it's a long piece. It's a piece that is hard to record also because it's extremely long. But it's one of my favorites from of Leo Brouwer's repertoire. Actually, it's one of my favorites.
And you played it so well. It's so powerful, your
Thank
interpretation.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's such a pleasure to listen
Thank
to it.
you.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you.
and I like what you're saying. And I'm gonna open up the questions to the student with this thought that I always tell my students, and I think it goes along with what you were just saying, that you can't just play the right notes and the right rhythm. You gotta really go into the interpretation, especially with music like this. You might get away with something as just playing the notes and the rhythm if you're playing Bach or Scarlatti. It's not gonna sound great, but the music itself just speaks so well. But with a piece like this, that Rito de los Orichas, you really need to, like you said, do your homework and research like you did, and it really comes out in your interpretation. I can see that you went through all that work. So I'm gonna open up the floor to Bloomingdale students who have questions. I know we've been talking about preparing questions, and I wonder if who wants to go first. Okay, Nico, go for it, Nico.
So you mentioned that you started playing at 19?
No, well, I started to compete when I was 19. But I started playing when I was 9 years old.
So
I started to compete in the international competitions when I was 19. But I was playing since I was 9 years old.
Okay, so if there was any tips or advice you could give to your, I guess, 9-year-old beginner self about guitar, what would they be?
First of all, don't give up. Don't give up, and practice. Practice as much as you can. But I think the most important thing is don't give up, because it's a beautiful instrument. It's an amazing instrument. So and you will see it, because in the beginning it might be a little bit hard, yeah, because there is plenty of things that you can't play. But once you reach this level that you really can play, and you can play whatever you want on the guitar, you are going to reach this feeling also that, oh, this is magical. So don't give up.
And I'm guessing that when you say practice, you mean every day, not the day before the lesson, right?
Exactly. So practice every day, a little bit. But actually, for example, it's interesting, Nico, what's your name? Because in Cuba we have another educational system when it's about music, that we have here in Sweden, for example, where I live now. In Cuba, you have to audition in order to get in the conservatoire. And once you get in, it's very obvious that you're going to be a musician and this is going to be your profession. So you have the school during the day from 9 to 12, from 12 to 1 you have lunch, and then from 1 to 5 then it's music school. And the music subjects are as important as mathematics and historic science. And I mean, so I have to say that, how old are you now, Nico?
I am 13.
Okay. When I was 13, I was practicing about at least 3 hours per day. Because it's a completely another system. So you really have to spend time practicing guitar. So at least 3 hours per day I was practicing. So yeah.
That's a good start. 3 hours per
Every
day.
day.
Yes,
Every day.
very important. Very important to start.
Yeah.
And I know Nico knows that because Nico's he likes to play really hard music. That's his thing. If it's not fast, if it's not hard, he doesn't even want to learn it.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Bloomingdale students? Who else? Yes, Jonathan.
It's very interesting because this Leo Brouwer, the music that you played is very beautiful, but I thought to myself, I was trying to see his formation after he left Cuba. And so I went, I kind of Googled Leo Brouwer and looked where he got his education, and he came to the United States and he studied at where did he study in New York? He studied at Juilliard. And then his teachers, the piece reminded me of something like a Jackson Pollock painting, kind of very abstract. And so, I looked and saw who his teachers were, and this teacher taught Philip Glass and other instructors. And from the Bauhaus school, there was somebody else from Germany. So I kind of interpreted this modern, but now that you talked about him a little bit more and about the piece itself and about the Orisha, I'm from Brazil, so we have Afro-Brazilian religion also, right? And it's
Candomblé.
Yeah. So when you go to the beach and you see a ceremony, the January 1st, and how you bring the deities like Irmanja, who's from the ocean, the drums go and it gets very, very, very involved. There's a very good song that's called Triste Bahia by Caetano Veloso, Triste Bahia. And it kind of goes through that whole rhythm, but I couldn't, it's very interesting. I'll have to listen to it again, the Leo Brouwer song, because how I got from Jackson Pollock to, kind of like a ceremony, right? An Afro-Brazilian ceremony with Cuban Afro-Brazilian, they're similar, right?
They are very similar. And Yemaya is one of our famous goddess in the Afro-Cuban region, and she's definitely part of the piece.
You have her, she's from the water, right? River and water and and
I mean, the music that represents her in the ceremony, there is some rhythms that are part of the piece, because the piece has several parts, and then it's the introduction, and then the goddesses are coming. And one of the goddesses that are coming into the ceremony, because the piece is a ceremony itself,
yes.
And this is what the piece represents itself. And then between every goddess, then we have what Leo calls in the piece evocations, but not in the religion. We don't call in the religion evocations, but he called it in the piece. Like when you pray and you really ask them to come to be part to the ceremony. And you would see in between the second part of the piece, in between the dances of the danzas de las diosas, in between there is always an evocation, because you finish one dance and then you evocate the next goddess, and then you finish the second dance and then you evocate the third goddess, because they have their own place and you don't mix them in the piece. So yeah, the piece.
Very interesting. No, very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and bravissimo. Okay.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Wunderbar. Wunderbar, right?
Wunderbar. Oh, you speak Swedish. Thank you so much.
All right,
Thank you so much,
Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jonathan is one of our. He's he's in the younger side of our students. He's like in the how do we call it, like he does like the kinder music stuff and the early childhood music. He's one of our most he comes to all the concerts and onto all the festivals. Thank you, Jonathan. Any other questions from Bloomingdale students? I see some of you out there. Let's see. Nico, you want to say something else?
Yeah, so you mentioned 3 hours a day, and that seems like a lot. Like, how do you motivate yourself to continue doing 3 hours a day? Keeping that?
That's a very good question. I was practicing actually a lot, and then we had how did I motivate myself? This is a very good question. There were some days that I didn't feel like to practice, and then my parents were amazing all the time. They were really trying to help me in order to get inspired in order to practice. So if I have to be honest, because I was also a child as you are, so I had how do you say, a deal with my dad sometimes in these periods that I didn't feel so inspired in order to practice. I wasn't that focused on my practice. So I had a deal with my dad that sometimes, I mean, we used to have deals because I'm this kind of person. This doesn't work for everybody. But I don't know, sometimes my dad used to come to me and say, okay, if you practice this week, what you have to practice, then on the weekend we can go, you can choose where you want to go, or you can eat ice cream 3 days in a row. And I love the deals. So sometimes I was just pretending that I didn't have, I wasn't so inspired to practice just in order to get some deals, some extra deals for my dad. That's how I found my inspiration when I was little. Then when I was teenager, I started to realize that I needed my own guitar. I needed a better guitar, better quality of my guitar, because I really wanted to be a guitarist, though. And then I started to. That was my inspiration when I was a teenager. When I started in high school, so I was really. Since I'm coming from a country that is really hard to get a handmade guitar, a good quality guitar, so my option was competitions. So I was just competing in order to win some good guitars. So that was my motivation number 2. And then now my motivation number 3 is that I love to play. So.
I wanted to say that besides being, and this is for Nico and for every guitar student here, it is 3 hours a day. And how do you stay motivated? Well, I guess Ariadne might agree with me on this, that, it's 3 hours, but you have a plan for those 3 hours. You're not just sitting down and just hoping things get done.
Exactly.
You have a program that you're working on. You have a goal, which is maybe a concert, maybe a jury, maybe a competition, an audition, etc. So you have to structure your practice in a way that keeps you motivated, and you have to like turn on your brain. It's not just your hands. You gotta like turn on your brain when you sit down to practice. And then
actually in that point, my dad did something for me when I was little that was very useful. He made a schedule for me for my practicing. And when I was little, I didn't practice 3 hours in a row. My dad used to divide it during the day, and my mom also. So they were amazing in that way that because it's I mean when you are a child, of course you have another interests also. So my parents were amazing in that point that I had a schedule in my room, and he just divide the time, my practicing time during the day. And sometimes it wasn't 3 hours, sometimes was 2 hours, sometimes was more. uh, but I think this is something that is also very important. It's not just how you're going to practice, it's also that when you practice many hours in a row, you are not so productive at the end. So for small children, I really recommend to the parents to divide it during the day, and then they are going to enjoy it more also. Mm.
So splitting it throughout the day is easier than sitting through a whole 3 hours at once.
Exactly. For me, was it? This is something very personal, but you can try it. But for me, it wasn't better. For example, I used to practice after breakfast in the morning, 30 minutes technique. And then I was done with the technique that day, go to school, back from the school, and then 30 minutes at the etudes, because you have to do also etudes, and then 30 minutes of this. Then you just divide it. I also practice it at the school because we got some hours at the school just for practicing, and my dad also divide that time because I didn't have just guitar. I have piano, I have music theory, I have history of music, so I had plenty of subjects to study though. So I had on a schedule, and he managed to find every day at least 1 hour for me to play. So this was amazing. But as I said, some days it was 3 hours, some days were two, some days were 1 hour. I mean, but at least something every day.
Very good. Thank you, Ariadna. I see Shoshana, you have a question.
Ariadna, thank you so much. So beautiful. I
Thank
just
you.
I just wanted to say thank you and say that I'm just, the last guitar festival we had, we also heard Leo Brouwer pieces, and when I was studying in high school, that was my favorite composer. And I had just a beautiful time just inside the strings and inside the warmth of them. So the connection of hearing you play this piece, oh, the percussive pieces, the off meter piece was so beautiful. And it's so, I love hearing that they came from ceremony, because
Yeah.
I've written songs for Yamaya. I didn't know the religion, I didn't grow in it, but I studied Afro-Cuban music and didn't even know she was of the water, but wrote a song all about the water. So this feels full circle and beautiful and a gift. So it's just so wonderful to hear your dedication and
Yeah.
your communion with the instrument. It's just
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shoshana. Any other questions? Bloomingdale students? Yes, Tessa, go ahead.
Well, so I'm basically wondering what being a musician in quarantine is like. Like, how does that change what performing is like for you? Because it's very different to like experience as you're listening, but it's probably even more different to play, especially when you're like professional.
That's a very good question. It really has affect me as a musician, the pandemic, um, because you are asking about how Corona has affect us musicians in right? Yeah. Um, yes, and there is one thing that I missed, that I really missed the most, and is to meet the public, to play live. This is the most exciting thing that you can actually, as a musician, experience. Um, and this actually is one of the things that you like the most, and this is one of the things that you cannot do now because of the pandemic. So we are not, yeah, unfortunately it's not so fun not playing concerts live. But on the other hand, I have learned a lot about playing online, which was very new for me. So you have to see also the positive part, and it's amazing with the technology, and we really have to be thankful that we have the technology, and at least we can play and do our work online. At least it's something, at least. It's not the same, but it's something. Yeah.
Yes, I think we had an excellent example of technology and music during the coronavirus in the concert today. But to continue in that discussion about being a musician in these times, I think you might agree with me that is, when we play a concert live, for me personally, I never play the same way in front of an audience. It's very different because you're playing and you're kind of like reading the audience. It's kind of like a collaborative effort between you and the audience, right? And when you play by yourself, it's so different. And also, we get so obsessed with playing perfect for these videos that we record. Like I have recorded some videos similar to this, and I just get obsessed. I have to sound like John Williams. It has to be like perfect. And when I was doing concerts, I wasn't feeling like that. I was just like,
No.
in person, it's just like, I'm just gonna play, and if I made mistakes, that's just part of the show. But now it's like, no, it has to be like perfect. And I wonder, when we look back at this time in the future, if it maybe it helped us in a way improve our technique or something. Any other questions, students, guitar students? Yes, Ivan. I think Ivan is going to play something for us. He has his guitar and everything.
I'm just practicing my trends, I guess. Like she said, she practiced many times. Now, my question is, how many guitars have you gone through? How many guitars have you gone through in all these years?
Sorry, once again, sorry, I didn't hear you very well.
No, I said, how many guitars have you gone through in all the years?
I have one between my 20s and 30s. I was competing a lot. So yeah, I have four babies. I call them for my, like, they are my babies. But the one I like the most, it's not that the one I like the most. The one that I have a very special connection with is the one that I'm playing on the video, because it was the really first one that I won when I was 19. So it was my really first prize ever. So for me, it has a very emotional.
That is a cedar top?
Yes.
Do you have any preference between cedar or spruce?
As I said, well, I mean, I'm a very special guitarist in that way that I have never choose a guitar. So I just want all guitars I have. So I go most for the feeling when I have them in my hands. Maybe it sounds weird, but for me, it's about connection. For me, it's like it's like first love. Is there chemistry? Yes. Then we play together. If it's there no, so no, we don't. I mean, I go most for the feeling than for the materials. Exactly. Yeah. And the quality of the sound for me is extremely important. Also, is very important, the sound. If I am happy with the sound, it's also the complexity of the piece. And then I used to focus in this part of the piece that I think I have to focus the most, you know, like I go for the first, I like to fix first the virtuoso parts of the piece, you know, technically speaking. So I do separate these parts and I prioritize them. And then I go through the whole piece again. Since, I mean, when you compete, is not in, prepare yourself for a competition is not the same like prepare yourself for a concert. So you really have to be very effective in your practicing because you have a certain amount of time in order to be ready with your repertoire. And this is something that I'm very grateful that I have been competing that much, because you get trained, you know, in your practicing, being effective in that way that you fix this and this and this, and then you go through the whole piece. And then so yes, and it's also depending on the piece itself, I have to say, depending on the piece itself. So it really varies the order of how do I work, but mainly like that. And yeah, mainly like that. And I do separate all the parts that I think I have to practice the most. Yes, I do. Then I practice these parts the most, and when they are fixed, then you take the whole piece. there's always at least one little part that you really have to practice.
Yes.
More than the rest of the pieces. I mean, it's always like that. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think Ivan, sorry, Ivan, I interrupted you.
No, great performance. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Yes, Jonathan, you want to add something?
Just one more. It's just in that description, it sounded like a blank canvas. You know, going back to Jackson Pollock and Louis Brower and the confusion. But when you practice, it's like making a painting. You start with the general, right? And then you work and work and work and work, and you bring out the details. Beautiful. I just saw parallels to the kind of practicing music and painting starting on a blank canvas and finishing a beautiful painting. You know, it's kind of very interesting. That's it. But thank you very much. All right. Beautiful play.
Right? Thank you.
All right. I think we have time for one last question. I don't know if any John Jay students want to ask a question, or anybody else from Bloomingdale.
I think Shoshana has a question. She has a
Oh, I think that was raised from before, right? Okay.
I have something, if you don't mind.
Dora, yeah, go for it.
Hey, so wonderful performance, incredible. I mean, exactly what I needed on this Friday night, but it's been a rough day. But I just really wanted to just highlight something that you said that really resonated with me when you mentioned, you said, you know, you weren't religious, but you took the time, I think it was in the Brower piece, if I'm not mistaken, the longer piece, to take the time to, you know, look at the ceremonies and learn more about it and get the story behind it. And it's so evident in how it was played. And I never really thought, like, I know there's certain pieces of music, you know, there's a story behind it, but when you invest so much time and you put everything in it to really immerse yourself in it, especially when it comes to ceremonies, which you don't know what's going on, it's very different, it's foreign to you. I think that's what makes the difference in how it was played for me. Like, that was the first time I've heard it before, but just like Jonathan, and you set the standard, you know, I haven't even heard the actual Brower piece. And I get what Jonathan was saying when he was referring to, you know, Jackson Pollock. I got it, because there was so many things going on at the same time. And there was one point where I'm like, is this still the same piece? Because it was long. I was like, wow. And just like the stamina, but it was an incredible performance.
Oh, thank you.
And, especially girl power all the way. That's always a big thing. And I think we
We
definitely need
need,
more.
we need girls in the guitar world. We need more girls.
Of that. We need more of that.
But there is something very interesting with Brower. I have a deep connection with his music. I have been playing his music since I was 9. Most of his pieces are obligatory at the auditions that we have at the school. And as soon as I discovered Broadway's music, I just fell in love with his music. So I always play Brower's music in my concerts, always, and he knows it. He knows it, but I always do, because one of the things there are several things that I like. Being a guitarist and playing music that is written by guitarists, you know this from the very beginning. It's very comfortable for him in his music, extremely comfortable. You don't suffer with the fingerings actually with Brower's music. Without the contrary, because he was an amazing guitarist himself. Second, I do love the way that he has introduced Afro-Cuban music in the classical music world in a very sophisticated way. I mean, but it's still beautiful that he did it. First of all, because he is an amazing teacher. I have several lessons with him, and what I like when I play for him is that he doesn't just focus on the guitar, he focuses on the music itself. So you get a history of music lesson, a guitar lesson, live lesson. So it's everything combined. So you get another point of view of the interpretation of the music, actually. So you are not just an interpreter, you're part of the whole process. Yeah, and maybe that's also why, because I like his music a lot. So maybe that's also why I get so deep in the investigation of his music, because I like it.
That's evident.
Yeah,
that's evident.
yeah.
And I hope that just how you describe Leo Brower right now, that's how my students describe me.
Oh, absolutely, Jose. Absolutely. Just like that. I speak for all of us.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
So I want to kind of like wrap it up and ask you, what time is it where you are, Ariadna? What time is it right now?
Oh, that's interesting. It's 3:00 in the morning, guys.
Yes. So we have to let you go.
Oh wow! Thank you so
your
much.
Beauty sleep.
It was very good timing with the date, Jose, because it's Red Day in Sweden today. So
okay.
Yesterday, I have to say, because it's the very first of May. Yeah, because when you sent me the invitation, I was like, 30th of April or 1st of May, which one would be in Sweden though? I was like,
right, yes. So
yeah.
You are a little bit in the future right now.
I'm in the future. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So Ariane, I think I speak for all the whole Bloomingdale community when I say thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your talent with us. We are so honored to have you here, and we have learned so much, not just from your performance, but from this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with the students and sharing your knowledge. And yes, so we will post the concert, the whole thing on YouTube, and we're going to share it so you can rewatch it and you can, transcribe the whole.
I couldn't hear myself. I didn't have no sound at all.
Yeah,
so.
We're so sorry about that. I don't know what happened. I have no idea how that happened, but that's part of the Zoom adventure, I guess.
Yeah.
So, any last words, Ariadna?
I'm thinking about, thank you so much for listening to my concert. Thank you so much for having me. Really, it was a pleasure actually to meet you. guys, and to play for you. It was actually a pleasure and an honor. So thank you so much, Jose. Thank you to Bloomingdale School of Music once again. I really hope that we can see each other in the
Yes.
future.
Yes, and this should only
person.
this should only be the beginning of your
Uh,
collaboration with the school. We hope to have you in person at some point.
Anytime. It's a pleasure for me. So anytime. Yeah.
Great. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, John Jay students. I see you. I know you're there. And thank you all Bloomingdale students. And thank you, Ariadna. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.